Are you winning? Do you need help in your life or business? Could you use some inspiration, business strategies, and success principles? I'm Daniel Gomez, award-winning business coach, keynote speaker, and best-selling author. On the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show, we will help you create a successful life and elevate your business. Together, we will discover the keys that unlock your success and dreams. Welcome back to another episode of the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show, where we motivate you, we inspire you, and yes, we educate you. And today, I'll tell you what, we got a guest all the way from the East Coast. Powerful guest today, Dr. Heidi, the business psychologist. Dr. Heidi, welcome to the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here today.
Well, thank you for joining us. I'll tell you what, I was looking forward to it and definitely love your tagline. There's the business psychologist. So do us a favor, introduce yourself to the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show, please.
Absolutely. So I'm Dr. Heidi. I'm a business psychologist. I'm out in the Boston area. And my major goal in life is to help organizations scale and be successful with their missions, where I really focus in on the business aspect, but also bring in that psychological aspect at the same time. So we look at the two coming together and we analyze your workforce, your structure, your organizational culture, and kind of see how all that blends and what we can do to create efficiencies, helping small businesses kind of get past that 5-year mark. Or if they kind of get to a point where they don't know how to scale, how to grow further, making that next leap. And a lot of work with nonprofits and especially connecting them so there's more collaboration.
Well, I can already know that we're gonna have a great time together because you're the business psychologist. I'm one of the top business coaches here in Texas. So I think we have a lot in common. And I think even before we came on live, one thing that really resonated with what you said is you're very familiar, and most businesses don't make it past the 5-year mark.
Oh, I know.
Right here at DG Enterprises, we're going on 7 years in business, and it doesn't even seem like it. It seems like we're just getting started. But what have you seen are the 2 or 3 biggest reasons why most businesses don't even come correct? I think what is a huge percentage don't even make it to 1-year mark. But why do most businesses don't never make it? What are 2 or 3 things that you see why businesses don't make it to that 5-year mark, Dr. Heidi?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the biggest reasons is the people who are leading it are working too much in the business rather than on the business, so to say. And I know that's really hard because it all falls on your shoulders in those first early days. A fire happens, you're the one who's responsible for putting it out. But having a good team under you is really instrumental to kind of making those day-to-day operations go really smooth so you can focus on that growth strategy. Not to say that you won't ever step into the day-to-day, but being able to have that opportunity to keep your eye on where you're going, what the next step is, making connections. I also find that people tend to give up right when they're about to be successful with something. And, unfortunately, those first few years can be a little rough. You get a little bit distraught. You're like, oh, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. And you start to feel like it isn't going to happen, but you don't know exactly, or you're not watching those milestones. And you might think, well, it's not equating to revenue or ROI, but there are a lot of positives that are happening, thinking about the people you're impacting, the people you've served, looking at all of those other things as benchmarks to success, the connections you've made, the momentum, looking at where you were from year 1 to year 2 to year 3, and not always using ROI as the complete benchmark. I say complete because it's necessary, but the complete benchmark for measuring success. And we tend to throw in the towel right when we're about to make that turn. And those are probably 2 of the biggest things that I've been seeing.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a part of the show where you say it, you know it, get out your pen, get out your paper, because Dr. Heidi is about to drop some massive wisdom. And you know what we say here, the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show, what you write down, you retain over 50% of it. And then you're going to go back and study your notes and then listen and watch this episode again. The biggest mistake is we think we know everything in one viewing and we hear it. Nope. Guess what? You're going to pick up something you heard the second or third time around. So definitely take some notes because I want you to retain the wisdom. So let's go a little bit deeper. I love what you said, right? But let me ask you this. How does somebody who is in their business, because it's easy to say that, right? Because I can tell you when I used to run a multi-million-dollar Chevrolet dealership and it wasn't my money, it was easy to stroke an $80,000 check for inventory, or even there was checks I wrote for $250,000. But the thing is, once it became Daniel's money, a $500 check seemed like a lot. $1,000 check seemed like a lot. And it took me some time to grow into that. How does somebody transition to just say really delegating it to getting maybe their first one or two employees? What are some steps you tell them?
Mhm.
Because in order to get on your business, you got to have some employees, build a team. And I think that's one of the biggest fear factor, because the first thing that they say is I can't afford it. And right, we need to get away from that thinking. And I think me and you are in alignment with that. So what's the guidance you would give somebody listening to the show of, okay, you've grown, you need help, you're scared that you can't make the payroll, whatever it may be to you. But how does somebody transition from, okay, you got to spend that money?
Mhm. So yeah, it's a great question, and I know it's scary, and I've been there many times myself, thinking the same thing. It's easier to tell somebody than actually put it into practice yourself, but it is very doable. So I am very, very slow to hire my first employees. And so typically what I start doing, the idea of a business, the idea of launching something comes well before it actually launches. And so in those early days, not only am I thinking about strategy and launch and what that's going to look like, I'm already thinking about who are the champions around me, who are the people who I know, who are the people that I can trust, who are the people that can work with me on this. Is there anybody already in my inner circle that I already have that trusting relationship with that I can maybe bring along? That's always the first thing that I look at because those relationships are already there. Second of all, if I don't have that, then what I do is I spend time kind of looking, networking, navigating. But just because I network and I make that initial connection with somebody, I don't jump in and be like, would you like to be an employee? No, that's not the way I do it. And so I spend a lot of time curating that relationship, getting to know them on a personal level, even before thinking about what their skill sets are. Because here's a little secret: if you can get along with somebody and you have a great relationship with them and you can have open communication. That is a big key. Being able to truly communicate from both sides about how you're feeling, what's going on, and keeping those lines open. A lot of skills can be taught, but a lot of those things are not something that always meshes with everybody. And then if I feel that all those things align, then I start with one project. Hire them on a project basis just to work side by side with me, doing one thing and seeing how that transitions into a working relationship, because then you're on a contract. You have an exit strategy, they have an exit strategy. You don't need to continue on. You don't need to worry about all those fears of, oh, how do I fire them? Can I fire them? Is it legal to fire them? You
Yeah.
have that all kind of pushed aside, right? And then when you know everything's kind of moving along, then you have that discussion and you do what your budget can afford. And so while I'm always saying having people in is really important, but if all you can afford is 5 hours a week, it's okay. Ask somebody if they're willing to do 5 hours a week. I've had employees who had two or three other jobs and they just worked a few hours in the evening for me. And that was perfectly fine. So it's looking and building those relationships because those first two or three employees are key. And you want to put the time and effort into curating those relationships and building your foundation because they will be with you through the long term if you take that time. And I want that strong foundation. I want those people to be by my side 10, 15, 20 years down the line.
I love what you're talking about. So think about that, ladies and gentlemen. Where can you get maybe a contractor for a project? It doesn't have to be a full-time 40-hour work week. And I love what Dr. Heidi said. Maybe you have a project going on and it's a lot. Maybe you're thinking about having a live event, or maybe you're having a huge bake sale if you have a bakery. Can you bring in a part-time baker? That way you're not doing all the baking. Think about, where can you bring somebody in? And the more you say you can't afford somebody, the more you're never going to afford somebody. You're
Mhm,
going to have to take, there's going to come a point where you have to take that leap of faith. So this is beautiful, because now we're going into the psychology part of it, right? So
mhm,
now what I love to talk about is, for me myself, it's capacity. Most people don't have the capacity to really see the next level of business for themselves, and they don't have the capacity to handle the stress level that comes with them. And I can tell you, when we got our new offices here in the beginning of this year, we outgrew it quickly, and it's like, okay, what do we do? We're at capacity of our office. Do I make the additional investment? And we did. And it's like, I didn't worry about where was that revenue going to come from. I knew we needed it in order to grow. But most people don't have that capacity. How does the psychological part come in play to expand your capacity, Dr. Heidi, to say, okay, I'm going to do it. Let's make the first step. I'm going to bring somebody on a contract,
Mhm.
but they're really scared. Talk to us about how does that psychological part play a huge factor? And what can somebody take? What are one or two psychological steps that they can take with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first and foremost is don't do it alone. Find yourself a business mentor, somebody that you can turn to in those moments of high stress that can help talk you down. And unfortunately, I don't believe it should be a friend. I don't think it should be a family member. I think it should be an unbiased third party who really does know, can look at something from a very clear perspective, a very neutral lens, have the background in your industry, what you're looking to do
So what
to
you're saying, it shouldn't be an Uncle Mark or an Aunt Jody that is a
probably not.
janitor or I'm
They'll
just
give
saying
you
for the
their advice
record.
for free.
Yes, I'm just saying for the record. So, what Dr. Heidi is saying, let it be someone who's qualified, a
Yeah.
business coach, a business mentor. And I love what we're talking about because the biggest mistake people make, I think, is they solicit free advice
Mm,
from people who ain't even where they want to be at. Like I said, as a joke, Uncle Mark's a janitor, but Uncle Mark's going to tell you everything you don't want to hear or what he thinks, but he hasn't had that business thinking. And I think it's crucial what you're saying is I one of the biggest things I say is we're making millions because I've hired business coaches. I wouldn't be where I'm at because it collapses the time. So I love what you're talking about right now, Dr. Heidi.
yeah. So I think that's a critical step to not go it alone, have that person you can turn to, really talk through your plans. And to also ensure to validate what you're currently feeling, because you don't want to ignore those feelings. You want to work through those feelings. And how do you turn those into a more positive outlook? And a lot of times it's just talking through the fears, talking through the what ifs, talking through, okay, so what if that did happen? Let's talk about it. What would that look like? And putting those contingency plans in place to say, okay, let's set this up in such a way that if XYZ does happen, you know exactly how to respond to it and you don't need to go into crisis mode. Let's say XYZ happens and you think through all of these type of possibilities and you make yourself a nice roadmap that you're comfortable with, and also remembering that, the next step is not climbing the mountain. The next step is stepping to the step in front of you, to the step in front of that, to the step in front of that, which will get you to the top of the mountain. If we try to go right to the top of the mountain, what happens when people are like cliff climbing and they try to go too fast? They slip and they fall back down, right? So we
Yeah.
want to make sure that we're growing in a reasonable manner, that not only our business can handle the growth, our employees can handle the growth, because it's going to be change that you have to walk them through as well, and that you yourself can handle what is about to happen. You don't want to take on so much that all of a sudden you're so overwhelmed you shut down.
Yeah. Well, when you said that, it reminds me of Mount Everest. If
Mm.
you ever count Mount Everest, you never go up Mount Everest just the first day. And I think a lot of new business owners think they want to run up the mountain, but in Mount Everest, you stay at base and you climb up to the first stage. You come back down, your lungs expand. Now you can go up to stage two because now you can take more air in. And I think in business, you have to understand, ladies and gentlemen, that you have to build your capacity to handle the stress level. You have to build the capacity to do more business. You have to have an understanding. Okay, things ain't always going to go right, but you can't give up and quit. I like the second part of what you said. So I think so many people, they're 3 feet from gold and they give in. They're 3 feet from gold and they give in. How important psychologically is grit when it comes to business?
Oh, it's probably the number one. You need to have the passion first and foremost. And it seems like a very odd place for me to have learned this, but when I was going through my doctoral program, man, I think that was probably worse than starting a business. I would have to say there was some deep grit that went on there. And I remember my mentor saying to me at that time, he said, whatever you want to research, whatever you want to do, pick something you love that you could die for almost, because he said at the end of the day you're probably going to hate it. And I said, wow, what a really odd thing to say. And I said, so I did that. I dug deep. I really thought about what it was going to be. I picked my research area and I dug into it. And I remember saying to him on graduation day, I said, I don't hate it, I still love it, just so you know.
Yeah.
And we had a good laugh over it. But that was really what it came down to, is you have to have that passion and desire and that burning to want to do it. And the other thing I see people doing sometimes is chasing the dollar, saying, "Ooh, there's a trend. I'm going to go do that. Ooh, there's a trend. I'm going to go do that." And they're chasing the dollar after the dollar after the dollar, rather than figuring out what is it that you love to do? What are you good at? Where's your niche in the market? And focus and steadily market to that place and market to the people that need those services. So you're wasting a lot of resources. Like I call it the hamster wheel, and you're just wasting resources.
Yeah. So what would you say to someone who is right? We'll just say they're in their going on their 30 year. They're kind of still in that red, but they do have progress. Like you said, they do have customers. Their brand is building. They're kind of getting traction. But all of a sudden, right, they're not seeing the result. The bills are piling up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
What would you tell to that entrepreneur? I know every scenario is going to be different, but I think it comes down to how bad do you want it? Because I
Yes.
truly believe there's always a test before the breakthrough, right? There's always
Mm-hmm.
a test before you go to the next level. And for me, it's exactly what you were saying. How bad do you want it, Daniel? How bad
Yep.
do you want it? Because I was at the breaking point when I was like, man, I could go back and work at my career where I was doing and making $250,000 a year. I'm killing myself for 150,000. Like I'm losing right now. But once I committed and I pushed through that barrier, like
Mm-hmm.
we broke over that next plane. So what is one or two steps that you can give us to take mentally to really develop that mental fortitude?
Yeah, and I think exactly what you're talking about is that just that mental exhaustion you get to. You've been putting the blood, sweat, and tears into everything, and you're not seeing the returns that you are hoping to see. And the best thing I can tell somebody at that point is don't take your foot off the pedal, but ease back. Ease back a little bit. Give yourself some grace, some dignity. Give yourself a few days, a week, to take some rest, even take a vacation, step away from the business. I know everyone says, I'm running a business, I can't leave, I have to be here 24/7. You are not doing your business any good if you are not at your fullest ability. And so by taking a week, you're refreshing your batteries, you're filling your cup, and now you're able to give back more than you were able to go at it. And I find that when people take those refresher moments and they look at things, they start to realize they have that rejuvenation. They're suddenly saying, oh, the things that were bothering me don't look so grim anymore. Now I'm in a more better mental state to talk those through and to see how do we progress with that. That's where you lean into your mentor again to say, okay, these are our
Yes.
trouble spots. What do we do here? But recognizing you have to work on yourself, whether it is self-care, professional development, whatever it be, you have to continuously develop yourself, but more importantly, also develop your staff. Don't ignore your staff and what they're going through, because if you're feeling it, I guarantee you they're feeling it, not to the same degree you are, but they're feeling it as well. So make sure that they're getting a chance to rejuvenate, refuel their batteries, because you're going to go very quickly from having engaged employees to satisfied employees. And satisfied employees can move very quickly to disengaged, and disengaged turns to turnover. So we have to be very careful.
Are you an aspiring speaker? Do you have a book that you've been wanting to write for months, maybe even years? Or are you an aspiring podcaster? You want to start that podcast like the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show and don't know where to start? Well, at Daniel Gomez Enterprises, we can help you do all three. We can help you become that paid speaker, share your story to the world, write your book, and get your podcast launched and help you produce it. We'd love to help you. Give us a call at 210-663-5954. That's 210-663-5954. We can help you become that paid speaker, write that book, and launch your podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Give us a call now. I agree with you. So, ladies and gentlemen, ask yourself this: where do you need to give yourself rest at? I think you need to stop listening to all the influencers on Instagram, and they don't know everything, right? They don't understand. Many of these people. I was laughing the other day because there was somebody who was a life coach at 17. I'm like, what life have you lived at 17? Come
I
on,
know,
like really,
right?
right? Everybody calls himself a coach. So listen, inspect what you watch, inspect what you expect.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're listening to somebody on social media that says rise and grind, rise and grind, first of all, ladies and gentlemen, rise and grind doesn't even sound sexy, and rise and grind will kill you. Okay.
Yeah.
So use wisdom. And some of the best things that I've ever done, Dr. Heidi, is just rest. Like we came
Mhm.
back and we got back instead of going to the lake house. I told my wife, you know what? Let's just stay home. And I slept, right? We slept. It was great. I woke up, like you're saying, you're rejuvenated. Sometimes you just need a night's rest. You don't
Yep.
have to go to Italy or take a cruise somewhere. Sometimes you just need to get in your bed and really just detach yourself from work, detach yourself from the distractions that are just pulling at you and just get by yourself. I think one of the best things I've ever done is I like to be on my boat and I just think and I turn off my phone and I just enjoy the waves and it's my me time.
Yeah, mine
Right?
is walks. I leave my phone at the house and I just go out into nature and I walk. And it's amazing what happens during those walks.
Let me ask you this because I know you're right, you're very successful in your own, but what have you heard on social media that you're like, I don't believe they're saying that, and people are actually following their advice. Like I put a post the other day, right? Inspect what you expect. Not everybody is what they
Mhm.
proclaim to be, because sometimes the advice they give, like they're not even living it out in their own life or business. So what's something crazy that you've heard or ridiculous? You're like, really?
Do we have 10 hours? I swear I say it.
Actually, we have 25, so let's go.
I know, right? I see this every day and I think to myself, well, the first thing that always just shocks me is how many people call themselves life coaches. And then I dig into their background and I'm like, you have no training, no anything in this area. What are you coaching people on and how do you have the credentials to do that? So that always baffles me, but people, like the shiny things. They like to buy into when somebody has a good slogan or a good thing, that psychological capture, right? And but I think the craziest thing recently, I heard from somebody, they were giving advice on somebody's financial statements, and they were not their specific ones, but just in general about reading financial statements. And they actually told somebody that if they're in the red, they should, so that meant the way they didn't mentally have to worry about it. They just should stop looking at them and let about a year go by and then go back and take a look at them again. And I was like, what? I was like, "You're gonna wait an entire year to look at your financials? How does that even work?" And I mean, and that's just one of many, many, many comments. I'm one of the things I
But
also
I love what you're saying
yeah,
there because that's right. I think back about what one of our clients said, and she's a very prominent account executive, a CPA. She says, Daniel, numbers don't lie.
right.
Numbers don't lie. So if you're looking at your financial statement and it's in the red, okay, well, where is the red? Where am I getting in the red? What look at your numbers because the numbers don't lie. And it's a great example how we listen to this and oh, okay, great, and another I don't know why this coming, but like Susie Orman, right? I remember we used to watch her show every once in a while, and I'd be like, you know what? That's practical wisdom, which is okay, but you got to understand too. I want your take on this, Dr. Heidi. Like sometimes what works for somebody might not work for you or in
Oh,
your industry.
absolutely.
And I listened to what I listened to what she was saying. I'm like I would never take that advice from Susie Orman because it doesn't apply towards Daniel, right?
Mhm.
And the truth is sometimes you got to go on in, sometimes you got to bet on yourself more. Sometimes your industry requires something different from this industry. What do I mean by that? Well, if you can't say, well, guess what? Stop running up your credit card if you're in the lawnmower business and you got to get gas every single day, right? I don't know how much gas a lawn business takes, but I can imagine you're going to go through at least 20 gallons of gas with your truck, with your lawnmowers, with your weed eaters.
Mhm.
So talk to us about that. How some people give advice, which yes, it may be successful. It would just say in the lawn care industry, but it doesn't apply, say, to another brick and mortar type of business as a sign company or even a consulting company.
Oh, absolutely. And I call that cookie cutter advice. And so I think it's great. Like, and I always preference, like, if I go on and do like a Facebook Live and give advice, I always say, preference it with this isn't going to be for everyone, but I'm going to give you some general advice for this area because people will take it and try to apply it to themselves and then it doesn't work. Everybody is different. Every industry is different. Every business within the industry is different. So you really have to look at things on a case by case basis. And again, I hate to feel like I'm just saying the same thing over and over, but that's where your mentor comes in again. And sitting with your mentor, being able to know that the ins and outs of your business, who you are as a person, how you operate, the challenges that your particular business has, and what that looks like. So looking at financials for one business and saying, okay, you're in the red because of this. The answer isn't simply do less of that. If that's what you need to make your business go, then you start looking at the other line items and saying, is there areas to cut back there? How do we increase revenue? Everyone always goes immediately to the expenses and how do we cut it? We have to have that conversation on both sides of the coin.
I love
So
that you said that. I
yeah,
want to interject that, right? Because
yeah.
I have this belief you can sell your way out of any problem.
Mhm.
And the problem that I see, Dr. Heidi, is that over 90% of small business owners, they don't know how to sell.
Yeah.
They don't know how to captivate their people, right? Even it's as simple as going to where were we at? We were somewhere, and I don't know if it was at the mall, but it was like kind of like a little like a vendor,
Mhm.
like little boots. People are there and like they're just in their chairs sitting back like this. And I'm like, is anybody gonna sit in front of their table and just kind of lure us in, right? I think it was like an outside
Yeah.
walking mall where it was inside and outside, but it's like you gotta sell your product, you gotta engage your audience, your potential client to what you have. And most businesses, and I'll say most because I think I'm being right. I would say over
Yeah.
90% of them don't know how to sell. They don't know how to offer their products. And what's your take on that? You can sell your way out of any problem.
Yeah. So you got two extremes there that you just talked about. You got the laissez-faire seller who's just kind of laid back and saying, "Well, people can come to me." And I'm telling you, you give this posture to somebody, no one's going to approach you. You look unapproachable. And but on the other hand, there's also the overselling, the in your face, going to constantly harass you, chase you down the mall so I can clean your ring. That approach doesn't really work well either. There's that middle ground, and it's to me it's all about networking, relationship building, and the key word authenticity and being yourself and being who you are. We look on social media, we look at what other people are doing, and we're like, oh, they're successful and they're doing it this way, so I should do it this way too. We're in different chapters, we're different people, we cannot replicate what other people are doing. It will not be authentic. You have to find out what feels real and natural to yourself and use that to connect with your followers and the people that are there. So the middle ground of don't sit in your chair but don't be in their face, where you actually have a connection with somebody, you talk to somebody, you get to know them. If they're walking through the mall and they got their little daughter with them, maybe you ask, oh, what's your daughter's name? Does she do any sports? You have a conversation and you say, what are you guys here for today? Maybe you don't have something they want that day, but guess what? If they live in the area, they're going to remember you. And that little girl's going to say hi to you the next time she comes by, and you're going to continue having that conversation. There's going to come a point where that person is going to tell other people about you, your services, the things that you offer, and they themselves at some point might be able to use what you have.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So let's shift a little bit here. So what is one of the biggest obstacles you had to overcome in your own business that you had to get to where Dr. Heidi is right now, very successful in business psychology? What's one of the biggest challenges that you went through and what did you learn from that, Dr. Heidi?
I would say probably the first and biggest challenges was getting my name out there. How do you go from, a person sitting in Carver, Massachusetts in their house to letting other people know you exist and what you have for services and what you're offering? And so I invested a lot into myself. I invested a lot into PR, just to kind of help boost that, get my name out there. But that was a decision I made for myself. I said, this is something I really want. This is something I'm passionate about. And so I started researching and taking the necessary steps that I needed to. I felt very confident in my knowledge, the skills that I have, and the things that I wanted to offer, but it was getting that out there. And it's something that, it won't stop tomorrow. It won't stop next year. It's something that I continue to do by speaking on stages, coming on podcasts, talking, networking, getting to know people. But for me, it's all about relationship building, building that network.
I love it. I love it. So the question on that, right? Because
Yeah.
I always say this is it's going to cost you more than what you think. if you
Oh,
think
yeah.
if you think it's going to cost you 1,000, it's probably going to
Oh, no,
cost you
no, no, no.
five. If you think it's going to cost you five, it's probably going to cost you 50,000. If you think it's going to cost you 50,000, maybe a quarter million. But when you started your PR, when really growing your brand, because I think so many people they hit a point, and I say, look, you're not going to make a $5,000 investment, and that's an end all be all, right? I think myself. the last time I kind of put pen to paper and just really looked at it, I've invested over $500,000 now in myself, just with
Mm-hmm.
everything that we've done. But
Yeah.
that's why we have the business what we have. And it hasn't been half a million in one time, but these past years, like I've been investing in this, investing in that, new equipment, office, just everything. But people, they want the results that they see Dr. Heidi and a Daniel Gomez Inspires, but they don't want to make that investment because they're like, oh, I already invested 5,000 or 10,000. And you and I both know that's not even the tip of the
Not
iceberg.
even a drop in the bucket. I don't
Yeah.
even know that what I've spent is a drop in the bucket, to be honest.
So what do you say to that entrepreneur, to that business owner that's their thinking as they're right? They're in their first 6 months to a year,
Yeah.
and it's like, well, my thing is it's always going to cost you more than what you think it is going to cost you. Give us your perspective on that, Dr. Heidi, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, during those early planning stages, working on the budget, talking to people who've been there, who have done it, who can give you a true insight in numbers. Just to give people an idea, just this year alone, I've probably spent about $100,000, and I could easily spend more. And so, I think it's knowing strategically when to spend it, how to utilize it, and then when to reinvest into it again. Because I've also seen people investing too quickly and they didn't get the benefit off their initial investment first. So you want to make sure that you're not just saturating and making noise either. So if you do something, let that roll out 2, 3, 4 months before you have the next big thing come out. And so that way it's a balance, because trust me, if you want to do PR, there's plenty of people who will take your money and do it for you day in, day out, and make lots of noise. But you need to do it strategically so it impacts your followers, because eventually your followers will just shut down because it's saturation. It's just noise. So you got to find that balance between not being noisy, but being impactful.
I love it. I love it. So let me ask you this. What's a quote or a scripture you rely on in times of adversity? A quote or a scripture that you rely on times of adversity?
Oh, man. I don't want to read the whole thing because that we don't have enough time, but this was actually from my grandmother. I keep it
Mm.
behind me at all times, and it's the poem Footprints, which I'm sure a lot of people know. But what's really impactful about it is that, during those times of struggle when you feel like everybody's given up on you and they say you only see the one set of footprints, it's not that people gave up, it's when God then picked you up and helped you along. And that, I think, is probably the closest. I mean, I have many others and shorter ones
Oh,
too
I
that I,
love that. I
yeah,
love
but that
that.
one's one of my favorites.
Hey, you're being authentic. That's what speaks to you. So I
Yeah.
think so. Ladies and gentlemen, think about what we've been talking about. A, are you listening to the wrong people on social media? Or are you getting advice from your Uncle Mark, who, nothing against people that are janitors or working, they're working their heart, right? Nothing wrong with that. But if they don't have a business perspective, a business mindset, a business psychology like Dr. Heidi, they don't know what they don't know. So, and then it's going to cost you more than you think. Maybe you're on that brink, like Dr. Heidi said, you're closer than you think, but you're about to give up. Reignite that passion, reignite that fire within you. Like when you first started, when you were barely 3 months into your business, and no matter what came your way, you weren't going to give up. And now you're a year and a half into it, and you're like, I'm tired. Guess what? That very struggle is what's making you who you need to become in business.
Mhm.
We said again, that very struggle that you're feeling. And like Heidi said, maybe this is a time where you got to stop being so self-dependent and self-reliant on you, ladies and gentlemen, and be more reliant on God and God carry me. For me, I wouldn't have the business that I am today. I wouldn't be and have the peace of mind if it wasn't for God. And I love the footprints point,
Yeah.
Heidi. And I think, before we came on live, do me a favor, show your book. Heidi has a new book. Dr. Heidi has a
Oh,
new book. As soon as I saw that, I loved it, right? Rise Up. And I think, when I see your title, go to Amazon, get a copy of
yeah.
that. And but I think of that scripture in Isaiah 60, verse 1. Arise and shine.
Mm.
Rise up and shine, because everything you need is already within you. right now, ladies and gentlemen, in business. And I think you got to really think about what we talked about in this amazing episode, because Dr. Heidi dropped amazing wisdom. Dr. Heidi, do me a favor, look in the camera and talk to that man or woman, that business owner that's on the brink of giving up. And they're hanging by a thread like that little kitty is. But because of the words you're about to speak life into them right now, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. So I beg you, don't give up. I have been there myself. I've been right on the brink. There have been days that I said, you know what? What's the point? I can go back to my other job that I had a steady income, didn't have to worry about any of these things. But you know what? At the end of the day, that wasn't going to make me look back on my legacy, my life, and feel that I felt fulfilled and that I was leaving a world better for my daughter or for our children. And so for any of you out there who are struggling, who have just maybe beyond that moment of saying, that's it, I am done, please, please send me an email, Dr. Heidi Gregory-Mina @gmail.com, and I will jump on a free call with you and let's talk it through. Let's see where you're at and let's get those things turned around and figure out how to get that fire burning again, because no one should give up on their dreams. We live in America. It's all about following your dreams.
Boom, baby. There you go. If that doesn't inspire you, if that doesn't put an injection of enthusiasm and belief in you, maybe you just need to go back and work. I don't mean that in a bad way, but Dr.
No.
Heidi just laid the fire down, right? Like we need help. Reach out for help. Stop doing that. And on that note, Dr. Heidi, thank you so much for dropping us
Thank you. I
so much
appreciate
wisdom
it.
and value. And ladies and gentlemen, if you're stuck in life, if you're stuck in business, go to Amazon right now or Audible and get your copy of The Makings of a Millionaire Mind. This book has helped thousands and thousands of people around the world. We get testimonials every day. It's available on Audible now. Get your copy. I promise you it's going to change your life. It's going to help your thinking, right? If your brain doesn't change, nothing changes. And once again, September 13th and 14th here in San Antonio, Texas, our Sticker Shock Speaking Academy. If you want to be our next success story like Tony Pollard has made thousands, over hundreds of thousands speaking from coming to Sticker Shock with the strategies. We want to help you. Reach out to us and our team. Once again, thank you, Dr. Heidi, for being here with us. We'll see you next week, ladies and gentlemen, on the Daniel Gomez Inspires Show. This is Daniel Gomez Inspires, and thank you for listening to our show today. Please share this episode with a friend, leave us a review, and subscribe to our show. And for listening to our show today, I want to give you a free gift. I want to invite you to our Millionaire Mind community. Text the word millionaire, that's millionaire, to 210-942-5059. Yes, join our community today and receive millionaire affirmations, inspirational quotes on a weekly basis. That's 210-942-5059. Text the word millionaire today and join our community. And once again, thank you for listening to our show.